Shango, yeah, yeah.
I'm a boo 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 Shango, yeah, yeah.
Abajagba emi oba kuso.
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 Ariwo, ariwo, yeah, yeah.
Ariwo, ariwo, yeah, yeah.
Ariwo, ariwo, yeah, yeah.
Ariwo, ariwo, yeah, yeah.
Greetings, everybody. Serpent Soul Sunday, the mystery of morality. So it's been a long day of just waking up a little bit, enjoying my day off on Sunday. Definitely enjoying bringing this topic to you guys. Sarah Phoenix asked me to speak on this topic of morality. So what I'm going to do is actually lump morality, law,
I'm a boo Shango.
what you call ethics all together and expose what they are. So again, this is Serpent Soul Sunday, the mystery of morality. So what happens is, first of all, I'm going to rewind, but I want to make a statement going forward that morality, by definition, is pretty much principles concerning the distinction between what is seen as right and wrong behavior. Principles concerning the distinction between what is seen as right and wrong behavior. Of course, this falls into all sorts of difficulties when one tries to deal with this because, as I was stating in earlier little promotional videos I was doing for this talk today, right and wrong can be different things in different generations, different cultures, different countries with different customs. So there's always this sense of, well, what is right and wrong? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this out there, that truly the understanding of morality past the standard definition is morality is pretty much the knowledge of, or gnosis, or knowledge itself of life force, who you are as a being. Morality is the knowledge or gnosis that you have of life force. And of course, life itself, being, is applying that knowledge to the vibrational frequency that you call life. As I said in past videos, the solid world of matter, or the goddess that we live in, because matter, it comes from mother, material, the goddess, is a vibrational frequency of actions or potential actions, which is the Father. In that, the knowledge of life force itself is what you would call morality. So it's kind of hard to kind of grasp this, because what morality really truly is morality, in a nutshell, in of itself, is based on behavior. Morality, they say, is based on behavior. Behavior is found in your instincts. So I'm going to go with one of the most basic instincts that you have. And usually instincts are to further your life. So you have the instinct, as you can even take it down to an animal. You have a lot of species of animals, like a lion or a deer, who have basic parental instincts. The best way that they know how, they try to take care of their young, whether they know it consciously or unconsciously, in order for them to further the species. It's the same with humans. What's happened to you is, like I said, time and time again, nature has been put to you as something separate from the mental, the intellectual plane, the human plane. They try not to say, they try to say this is not true and we're part of nature, but everything they teach you, almost everything they teach you, teaches you a separation of nature. So people naturally believe that law and morality is separate from nature. Like they believe technology is separate from nature. This is not true. Morality, and one of the key things of morality, is it's supposed to be a set of techniques that amplify behavioral instincts that make the species as a whole live a better life and evolve into a better existence. This is because the individual, especially when it comes to humanity, the individual is actually a part of a community or communing spirits. Again, once you start grasping the deeper meaning of this, it's almost so simple, it's elementary, it's laughable. You do not live alone. Just for me, I said this on another podcast and broadcast, just for me to be able to broadcast what I'm broadcasting to you has to be rules, regulations, and whole industries of people developing this technology, maintaining this technology for me to even speak to you today. You are not living alone. You live in a community. So I'm going to rewind to what a community is so you understand how important morality is. A community is a gathering of communal spirits who have manifest themselves in the flesh. When they say your community or the society, they're talking about a group of people. Those group of people are returning spirits. You're reincarnating lifetime after lifetime. There's no such thing as separation of religion from community. The reason why our religions and our sciences have to be separated is because the moral laws that they're based on, a lot of them, not all of them, but a good amount of them, have nothing to do with your basic instincts as more as they have to prop up a certain system of economic growth and stimulus. This economic growth and stimulus benefits the few and doesn't benefit the many. Economics is good. Money is good. The only thing, the technology is good. Clothing is good. Being materialistic is good. Being not materialistic is good. Having a huge ego is good. Putting your ego in check and having ego death is good. All these things can be utilized to further the species. So same thing with morality. The morale, when you say that, hey, man, the people are working harder, how'd you get them to work harder? How'd you get a workforce to work harder? We boosted their morale. We gave them a raise and we gave them earlier days off. You know, you can destroy morale. You gave somebody too many days off. Now they're getting lazy. They don't want to come to work. So to boost the morale, which is the root word for morality, is to boost life force energy. So I'm going to go back to that again. So I'm going to rewind backwards a little bit. You know, it gets a little confusing because of basically how you've been taught that morality is just a simple code of laws. So we're going to rewind back to basic instincts, and I'm going to give you the all-time supreme myth of morality, of good and evil, that's been taught to you since you were a little child, and it was taught to you. And people say, oh, this myth is not important, or atheists will tell you it doesn't matter. It does matter. The myth that I'm about to break down to you, that you and everybody knows, has been pumped into your mind, pumped into like 90% of the people who live on this planet's mind. It's the myth of Adam and Eve. So we're going to go rewind back to the myth of life force. So I'm going to do it two ways. I'm going to rewind just a little bit back, and I'm going to go forward into the myth of Adam and Eve. So in the story of Adam and Eve, the woman, remember when I say woman, Eve, remember what I taught in my other lessons about hermetics and metaphysics. Anytime they say woman, they're saying receptive energy or receptive force or receptive matter. So the receptive side of the psyche, Eve, goes into the garden. Remember when I say woman, Eve, I'm going to go slow for you guys to understand. The receptive side of your psyche goes into the garden of the wilderness. The garden and the wilderness represent the subconscious mind. Again, stuff like floods, deserts, jungles, wilderness, woods. They're always talking about going into the subconscious mind. And it's just different versions of what subconscious mind. You have the subconscious mind that produces. You have the subconscious mind that's empty, the desert, subconscious mind that produces a lot of material like a wilderness, etc. Right? So this can be seen. Once you know this, you can see this in everything. Technology comes out of the subconscious mind. Technology is the conscious mind taking elements out of the subconscious mind to take archetypes and make them into a material plane in order to make them into functioning, working mechanisms of technological machinery that we use and gadgets that we use to make our life better. So you always hear them say that Ogun, who is considered force, because you got to use force to bring things forward, is a masculine force. He's a warrior, but above that, of course, Ogun is the god of technology in the Yoruba West African tradition. Ogun goes into the woods. If you're a child of Ogun, they say normally you have a good concept of how to navigate through the woods. He goes in the woods or the forest. He uses the elements that are in the woods and the forest. He's a blacksmith. He brings forth, he's the active component that brings forth material out of the subconscious mind. So again, the receptive feminine principle or psyche of the mind, Eve, goes into the garden or the wilderness, the garden, which is the subconscious mind that's being cultivated. She therefore sees a tree with a serpent. Now, the serpent, of course, represented two dual principles. They represent, of course, the one who maintains order and protection of the ruling part of your psyche, which is your life force. The serpent also represents chaos. Chaos. Now, of course, in our society, chaos is seen as bad because it's the opposite of order. And it's true, if you have a lot of chaos in your life, you don't have enough order in your life becomes destructive. So again, there are two serpents. There is the serpent of life, and I'm not going to go too deep into the names. And then there's the serpent of chaos, or what's considered death. So the serpent of death, of course, bites and drains life force. What it's really doing is it's resetting life force. So you'll see these myths where Apis or Apophis, or whatever they call that serpent, bites Ra and tries to take his life force. And then, of course, the one who protects Ra, the one who gives Ra vision, the eye of Ra, is Wachet, which is the cobra. So you got the good cobra. I'm going to use the word good and bad just for lack of, you got the good cobra, the protector. Wachet is the protector of sovereign royalty. She is the protector of Ra. The pharaohs considered themselves, or the Perriers, or the Nesut Betis, whatever they call themselves, those Kemetic rulers would put a cobra on their crown. The cobra represented Wachet, who was the guard and the giver of life force. She gave the eye of Ra over to Heru, who is the hero, the one who takes action. These are all high formulas. So the woman goes into the garden. The serpent in the garden is there to do what serpents do. He's there to destroy and to build. He's there to destroy and to build, to reset and to rebuild. That's what the whole point of that myth is. And I'm going somewhere with this. And you see this, and I'll go a step further. You see this in the rites of Shiva. Shakti goes down. The Kundalini serpent that they practice in Kundalini yoga is at the spine, the center of the animalistic nature. As he's drawn up, he goes to enlighten the third eye of Shiva. He's drawn up by Shiva's dancing lover, who is a feminine power. She brings it to the masculine power to take action. You're going to see how this aligns with Adam and Eve perfectly. It's the same story, just different initiates in those mysteries understood different things. And unfortunately, we were on the receiving end of people who did not understand the mystery of the serpent, the knowledge of good and evil, the foundations of all morality. So again, you see a woman bringing the serpent to, or the fruit of the serpent, or wherever, how they wanted to spin it, because it's all about perception. But she brings it to Shiva's third eye. Shiva was the god of destruction and creation. Again, you see the serpent. He was represented by a cobra. When the third eye was open, they say you go crazy. You realize you're naked. So I'm going to go back to the biblical story. Eve runs into the serpent. You guys can all read this in the Bible in Genesis 3. If you read it, don't read it with a pastor or somebody with you who's going to taint the story. Just read the story as it is. Eve goes up to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Again, morality is based on knowledge of life force, the knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of active and receptive, the knowledge of what they came to call God and the devil. She basically came of the knowledge of dualities. Dualities. The serpent says to her, did God, or Yahweh, it was Yahweh, which is I am, said to you, you cannot eat of the fruit of this tree. And this symbolic, mythological story. It's a symbolic story, not literal. I got to make this emphasis. Not literal. Eve says, we were told that if we eat of the fruit of this tree, we will surely die. The serpent then destroys what needs to be reset, because it's at that time the psyche, and time is an illusion, so it's relevant to whatever cycle was going on billions of years ago. It could be 100 years ago. It could be hundreds of thousands. I'll get into the illusion of time later on in another broadcast. But basically, the serpent says, you won't die. You will become like the Bena Elohim. Basically, you will become like the gods and goddesses. El meaning God, masculine, singular. Elo, E-L-O meaning gods. It's a plural. Him being a feminine derivative. And people beat you down with this and they'll argue this is not true and blah, blah, blah. So, but if you can read and you can put stuff grammatically together on even a third grade level, you'll realize that it is true. Because in the same book of the Bible, he says they know that once you eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is not real fruit, it's symbolic fruit, your eyes will be open and you will be like the Bena Elohim. You'll be like the gods and the goddesses, because it's a ripped off ancient Kemetic mystery. Okay. Yahweh did not create in the creation story by himself. He worked with the Bena Elohim, the forces of nature. He's an active force of I am. When you say Yahweh, you're saying I am, that I was, that I will be. I am. So I am, the I, that is us, worked with the natural forces before the parasite hit us. So anyway, basically, she eats of the fruit of the tree and her eyes are open. She takes it to her husband. They skip around in this story. She gets to her husband, says, you got to eat of this fruit. He eats of the fruit and his eyes are open. Then in Genesis, you go read this yourself. In Genesis, it says that God, which really translates to Yahweh, went back to the Bena Elohim. It says God went back to the heavenly host. And of course, Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you and all around you. So it really wasn't, when they say heaven, it's a symbolic thing as well. And he says to the heavenly host, or that active principle says to the heavenly host of the receptive and active nature forces, the gods and the goddesses, he says, behold, the man and woman, has become like one of us. Has become like one of us. So he tells them, he tells to these divine deities, these heavenly hosts, you want to call them angels, whatever you want to call them, the man and woman have become like us because they ate of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. Now, lest they live forever and they eat of the knowledge of the tree of life, we must chase them out of the garden. Now, I'm not going to get too deep in the rest of that, but here's the thing to see. What he's basically stating is their knowledge of good and evil has made them godly, divine, has given them divinity. All right. This is a clear example of morality. All right. Morality is supposed to amplify the controlling of certain behavioral instincts that are in your DNA code in order for you to take control of your evolutionary process. So an animal is at the mercy of nature. As they're at the mercy of nature and you go to low-level organisms, I've had this discussion before. This is where all this comes from as far as how we became divine beings, how you became the gods and the goddesses. This is why the Egyptians and the ancient Kemetic people called the gods or God nature. So nature drives living organisms to try to survive. In this survival, they develop sensory perception. You're told that sensory perception, your eyes, your tongue, your hands, your ears, your nose, not a big deal. They just help you eat, fuck, sleep, build shelter, and procreate. This is a lie. All that stuff I just mentioned, eating, living, procreating, is supposed to be spiritual. It's supposed to be what it always has been. The more complex the living organism, the better they become at survival, the more they can take in divine consciousness. That means that the reason why the serpent, the Ouroboros, eats its tail is because it's driving living organisms to develop better and better hardware so they can pick up more and more of consciousness. When this consciousness fractalizes, it's called spirits, nature forces, Orisha, the gods, Arusi. I can keep going for days. The Olympians, whatever they call it, they break up into major, what you call major forces, and those forces start to fractionalize into smaller and smaller and smaller forces of nature. So as the living organism is climbing the evolutionary ladder, as they would say, and it's really cycles. You see things like orcas, who are giant whales of the ocean, killer whales, who teach their young how to hunt, have a communication system. They get up to us. The higher we go, the more we adapt to live past the animal world based on our ability to judge what we think at any given time is good for our instincts, and we live more in a world of abstraction. We live more in a world of abstraction. We live based on symbols. These symbols can be passed down. These symbols, colors, and meanings. So your ancestors, as you go back, and the ones who are enlightened, they knew that every color had a meaning. Every symbol had a meaning, had a psychological trigger. They knew that the psychology of the psyche of the person was deeply linked into their consciousness and their spirit and their being and their well-being. So it wasn't just considered, oh, this is behavior. It wasn't just considered, oh, this is just a word. I'm just saying something. It was considered that everything that they were doing had a spiritual connection. Now this goes, that pressure was taken off in one sense, because when you think that only special things have spiritual meaning, you start to look in the spiritual world unrealistically. So then you look at morality unrealistically. So then good and bad become a set system of rules that never change, which is not true. So this is where the confusion comes about when people say, oh, there's the 42 virtues and you got to keep all the virtues throughout all eternity. And this is not true to how behavioral instincts change and adapt over time. So morality adapts over time, of course. So going back to what morality is, again, they eat from the tree of life. The destructive serpent comes, opens up their eyes. They realize that they're naked, and then they proceed to fall. As they fall or they descend, they realize, hey, I do know stuff now. I do have knowledge. And then they start procreating. They start doing the acts of the gods in the symbolic story. If you go back to the story of Adam and Eve, they didn't make children until after they ate from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So morality basically is supposed to be a formula or codes that you use, abstract codes that we use, to basically bring good instincts or instincts that help us not just survive, but help us live in a state of bliss and happiness. And the reason why is there has to be a compromise, because we live in a community based on communication. Communication is not just with you. Communication is something that you share energetically and archetype based with groups and groups of people. So that's why you have these customs based on cults that become cultures. So it's custom that when you enter a certain house, you speak a certain way. In one culture, they might have a different custom. This becomes confusing because any different culture may have different customs and different code of ethics and morality to boost a certain survival mechanism. And this is why the messenger or Mercury always comes to communicate the will of the gods. Mercury is the communicator who communicates the will of the gods because he's letting you know this is what you need to do based on your DNA code and based on the pressure that's coming outside from nature. So if nature, let's say, does something to the sun and it creates an environment in which we live in a hotter and hotter climate, basically our DNA code is going to make an instinctual change. That change will help, whether our skin gets darker, whether our hair starts to take this hair shape and it starts to lift up off of our ears to keep the heat from dropping onto the back of our neck. And then you will see out of that, we will start to worship that in a sense because it helps us to survive in a certain climate or temperature. That worship, the priest then comes with a law that would amplify those survival needs. So you live in a culture where you're living an old age, you have to teach your children how to hunt and survive. So we went from being lower organisms to higher developed organisms. We needed to teach our children many different aspects of survival. In that, we started learning that we can live an enjoyable life by not just knowing how to mechanically build fire and tools, but having customary rites that bring happiness with our interconnections to our community. This happiness that you share with festivals, what you call holidays, family gatherings, high forms of communication, camaraderie, friendship that you share with your neighbor, helps us to stick together, helps beings of a high intelligence stick together in a stronger community. So therefore, we have a higher rate of survival. I'm just getting real technical now, idealistic, because power is in numbers. Power is in numbers. So the fractal pieces of highly conscious beings come together in a whole based on a strong community that has strong customs and cultural values that bring everybody together. Is this perfect? No, of course not, because it's not supposed to be perfect. There's supposed to be some kind of discord. There's supposed to be a certain amount of infighting. There's supposed to be a certain amount of confusion. And this is where you see that the communicator, the honor of the community, the one I told you about, the one who comes and he's the communicator of the gods. They know him as Mercury, Alegba, Eshu. He's known as many different names in many different communities. He's often the trickster. He comes to trick the community as much as he comes to bring the community together. And this trick that he's doing is because he's working on behalf of the set principle where he resets everything. So you have something that we stuck to. So I put the example of what I put in the earlier video. This is why morality changes. This is why set dogmas, ideologies are toppled over. This is why it seems like law is not important. So you have one generation. Like I said, they're developing as a culture. We start to teach certain customs and principles that were given to us by the shamanic priesthood. The custom that they have is that to be a man, you got to go off into the woods and you got to hunt down a wild animal. And not only that, but you got to be fearless when it comes to hunting these wild animals. Now, it's known in that area, let's say it's India somewhere, that bears and tigers come out the woods, and if they see some human beings walking around, they just kill them. So the warriors, the priesthood makes sure that they set up an entire moral code of ethics. If you cannot protect people from animals, you are considered a bad part of the community. If you are not courageous enough to, even risk your life to protect the family units that produce the tribe and the village, then you are a bad part of the society and the community. Okay? people start to evolve. As they go through these rites and rituals, it's like you have to, let's say the priest makes you run out, you got to go kill a male tiger and bring back the tiger's head when you become a man. And, you spend your life learning techniques of hunting and etc. As these techniques get better and better, the village becomes safer and safer. As the village becomes safer and safer, humans become better at killing animals. The populations of the bears and the tigers start to decline. A new priesthood emerges and says, we are supposed to be one with nature. You're no longer supposed to be killing these tigers and these bears. People will then jump up and say, hey, it's been our tradition for 1,000 years to kill these dangerous tigers and bears. And they won't even say dangerous tigers and bears. They'll just talk about the rights, and my father taught me this, and his grandfather or his father taught him, and my great-great-grandfather taught us this as it's been passed down for 1,000 years, blah, blah, blah. I'm just giving an example. People will resist that change. They will not change that moral code, that tradition. They'll say, hey, man, you're no longer a good man if you kill wild tigers and bears. You're a bad person. They'll say, that's baloney. I'm a good person. I kill tigers and bears. Tiger and bear populations almost extinct. There's no reason to keep killing tigers and bears. This is what happens with morality. Instead of being seen as a fluid, flexible framework of understanding life force, because it's not so much that people don't understand morality. They don't understand life force. They don't understand that good and evil is a reflection of life force. What can be good, what was good for me at the age of 7 when I didn't have certain food allergies is not good for me at the age of 42. So at 7 years old, peanut butter was wonderful. Great source of protein, great source of, if the peanut butter was raw, enzymes, etc. We can go on for days. At 42 years old, because I'm allergic. So this is how life and life force is. This is how law is. So I'm going to take another example. I'm going to go backwards again, back to the Kemetic rites. So life force was considered Ra and Ra'et. Life force was considered Ra and Ra'et. So the original origin of Ra was he emerged out of Nun, N-U-N. Nun was considered the sea or chaos. As he emerged, so you have life force that expands outwards, and then you have life force that starts to set up boundaries. His wife, Ra'et. That's why you can say Ra, and then when you cut off that life force, you say Ra'et. You cut it off. Ra'et. This is with the IT on everything. That's why there's Paul and Paulette, etc. So life force emerges and gives birth to Ma'at, which the ancient Kemetic people, Egyptians, said that Ma'at was basically the goddess of the law. The law, all right? And Heru was the enforcer of that law. So Heru's walking around with the Ankhs, which represents life force. So again, we see that the law and morality are life force. Life force. Again, this is a big must that you got to start seeing this. As you travel through life, you see all these laws, rules, and regulations. Law and order and morality and codes of conducts and better way of treating people or better way of the community getting together was designed initially to try to amplify life itself, to make life better and better. That was the point of all this. All right. So this is why when you see laws, a lot of the reaction that people are having to morality, a lot of reaction that people are having to law, a lot of reaction that people are having to ethics, a lot of those reactions are based on the fact that a lot of the laws, the ethics, the moralities, the religious dogmas, the ideologies that have been given to us no longer serve to improve our life. And a lot of them in the beginning didn't improve life at all. They were really there to enslave people. So what happens is you have the reality of perception versus the reality of being. This is what I was talking about earlier. And what happens with the reality of perception versus the reality of being is you might have a perception or a law that is not in alignment with your basic instinctual natures. So somebody might tell you, you cannot eat a certain food because it's bad for you. You know, stop eating ice cream. Ice cream is bad for you. The perception, of course, is based on or supposed to be a GPS, as I said before, a guiding force into the reality. So the perception is perceived. People eat ice cream. They start gaining weight. Some of the people, it starts to mess with their breathing because it builds up mucus in their body. Some of the people, it actually destroys their joints and things of that nature. And so the perception, of course, is supposed to be a guiding force, like a GPS. And this is tied in directly to laws, codes of ethics, what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. So somebody stops eating ice cream, but they have these wicked cravings for ice cream. And they're dying. Like, oh, man, I need some ice cream, man. The hell is going on, man? I hate this fucking shit. And somebody's just giving them fruits and vegetables, and they're dying, and they just break down one day and they go and have some ice cream. And now they have broken the law. They've broken some moral ethic that says, hey, you got to take care of your body and live a healthier lifestyle. And then the reality of being takes over and becomes the serpent of poison, the serpent who takes the life force from Ra, the serpent who destroys, the evil serpent. He says, hey, man, you're going crazy. You're starving to death. Look at you, man. You're starving to death. You're not going to die. What, you going to die today or something, man? Go have yourself some ice cream, man. You can't have ice cream? And this is what happens all the time when it comes to morality, laws, codes of ethics, etc. So somebody comes along and they get in touch with the reality of being. Why do I love sugar? You know, they basically the good serpent comes to them, and the good serpent offers them the knowledge of good and evil. Why do I love sugar so much? Why do I have to have milk and cream frozen? Why? And then they do research. They go into gnosis. Now they find out my body needs fat. My body craves fat. Sugar becomes fat instantly. The sweet taste that's in my mouth lets me know I'm eating something that's going to turn into fat. It's going to hit. The fat's going to be delivered to me at a rapid pace. So somebody goes out. They get maybe some stevia. I'm not saying stevia is the best, but they get some stevia because they need that sweet taste. They get some avocados. They might get some flavoring. And whether good or bad, they make avocado ice cream. So they get home, they eat their avocado ice cream. The fat and the sweetness hits them instantly with good fat that builds the heart, doesn't break down the knees, etc. Now, I'm not saying stevia is the greatest or certain people have to live off avocados. I'm saying an alternative. I've seen it work in my life. So all of a sudden, you go from somebody who's weighing 200-something pounds down to somebody, or 215 pounds down to somebody who's weighing 175 pounds, because they're going into the knowledge of good and evil, and they're getting in touch with themselves. They're getting in touch with what they need. And then they find out that your body does need fat. It's good for thinking. It's good for building muscle. It's good for maintaining testosterone in men. It's good for balancing hormones in women, etc. So again, the law changes. And somebody says, ice cream is not bad at all. I make ice cream. I make the cream of avocados. And it's frozen, so it's ice. Same thing with morality. So when somebody says morality doesn't matter, morality definitely matters. When somebody says, oh, you have to keep the law, you must obey this morality, 9 times out of 10, if it's something that's not, you can't see any benefit from, it's not beneficial. The morality in the law, doesn't matter when it was written, who was written by, is fucking worthless, okay? So what's happening is you're seeing 2 extremes with no balance. That's why the law has to have balance. It has to have knowledge that weighs itself out like, okay, I need cream, and I obviously crave for sweetness because it's a survival mechanism that was put into me millennia ago to make sure that I, as a species, because you keep recycling again, reincarnating again, would find sources of fat that accelerate into fat quickly into my body so I wouldn't starve to death. Also, I must have developed over generation after generation for the fat. The same can be said when it comes to things of, I'll take the most obvious thing, sexual nature. So as a man and a woman, you need sexual stimulation. What'll happen to you is somebody will say, oh, nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing matters, right? So true indeed, they say nothing matters. You can just do whatever you want to do. Anybody who's a parent of a child, if you've got like a little 12-year-old, 11-year-old daughter, if somebody comes into your house and starts having sex with your daughter and says, man, I love having sex with little children, it's going to matter. It's going to matter because your basic instincts have built morality. Somebody's going to tell you that's just a conditioning. It's not a conditioning. If you go and you try to mess with one of these tigers, little cubs, if you go, it just depends on the animal and the species, of course. You go and you try to mess with a lot of these wild animals' children, they will kill you. The wild animal will kill you because it's in his genetic nature for him to make sure that the species or the little creature that he is raising or she is raising has developed enough in their psyche that they can take care of themselves on their own. So, of course, there are certain rules saying, hey, in our culture, in our society, a person at the age of 12 has not developed the social skills that they need to maneuver around in the community. Now, if you go back in time, you can go to certain cultures in which at the age of 11 and 12 years old, you were fully grown and you were supposed to know how to take care of yourself, supposedly. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. So in those cultures, not only would somebody wouldn't come to your house, they would come to your house with like some cattle or some property or some money and say, hey, I want to marry your daughter. I'm willing to give you 3 cows. That man was probably about 30 something years old, 32 years old. And your daughter was probably anywhere from the ages of 11 to 14 years old in certain parts of the world, not in all parts of the world. All right. So that's how morality changes. Now, anybody who has any common sense will say, oh, it's just because no, it's not just because the law has changed that it's no longer appropriate for you to try to marry an 11-year-old. It's because the species, our DNA code has changed, and we are evolving into creatures who are more and more advanced. And in our advancement, 12 years doesn't cut it. 12 years doesn't cut it. You got to be alive way longer in our more advanced culture to be able to be a self-responsible adult with all the things that we need in our advanced culture. And then if you go back far enough in time to certain golden ages where they claim people were living to 400, 500, 600 years old, people say, oh, that's baloney. That probably wasn't. And then probably the marriage age could have been longer. They could have seen it like, hey, man, you don't settle down or have sex with nobody or blah, blah, blah until you're 150. Because we live 700 years and we have a complicated structure of society in which you're not ready for all that stuff. Or it could be reverse, whichever one it was. But what I'm showing is anybody who's alive in our time and age who doesn't understand that there's certain customs and moral codes that are there to promote life at a higher stage is delusional to the very nature of their heart and how they feel about their own children. All right. And this is very important, but you don't want to go the other extreme, of course, where you're clinging on to morality and certain laws that do not serve anybody. You know, once upon a time, my grandmother would be like, hey, you come in my house, you can't say curse words. And I would watch over the years, you know, my grandparents were like that. I think my father up to a certain age was like that. You don't say curse words. And if you wear a nice suit and tie and you speak what they call properly and you don't curse, you're a good person. Well, there's a lot of con artists out there who would con grandmothers and grandfathers by coming up in the house and being well-dressed and never cursing, and they would just steal everything out of the house. There's a lot of people who are selling bad stuff to people. There's a lot of people ripping people off. There were a lot of child molesters in churches who had a suit and tie on and spoke nice and messing with your kids. There's a lot of people who would embezzle money, who would steal money from elderly people. There's a lot of doctors out there giving people bad medication, and they say, I believe in Jesus and I love the Lord, I never curse. and I'm a good person, and and that's a way of getting you, because the community has advanced. Things have changed. So just because you don't say fuck and shit and motherfucker doesn't make you a good person. That is an illusion. That has nothing to do with morality. Morality now is, of course, are you dealing with me on an honest level? Are you hiding knowledge? Morality is no longer just faith in this aspect of our society. It's no longer just belief. It's hiding knowledge. You knew this was going to mess me up. You knew that was going to jack me up. I don't give a fuck if you don't curse or not. You knew that was going to have a bad effect on my children. You give my children medication and it fucked them up. I don't care if you wear a suit and tie or not. You're fucking up my kids with bad medication. So now we're going into an information age where it's more of knowledge, sharing knowledge. And there's so much knowledge. There's so much information. There's so many bits of knowledge and information that you no longer have to hide knowledge from people anymore. I hope this sinks into people. You no longer have to hide knowledge from people anymore. We're all called to specialize in certain pockets of information and start sharing this information amongst each other. This will cause the brain and the psyche of all of our species, humanity, to have to expand. We're getting to an age, and a lot of business people are stating that in the age that we're coming into, that the workers and people of the world have to know how to multitask and take in massive amounts of ever-changing information. This will cause generation after generation after generation to not only develop bigger minds, but bigger hearts, because you got to have a lot of willpower and drive to be like, oh, I just want to be even successful, even success at a level that you're just a normal standard person. And this comes with stuff like operating smartphones, knowing how to go to work and how to jump into multiple computer applications where you're at your job. Most jobs now are highly computerized. And so now you have people in high positions of power who keep trying to take us back into darker and darker ages, and they don't want you to come to this knowledge age of light. And in the knowledge age of light, of course, is a big shadow being cast, because as you have more light being brought in, more knowledge being brought in, you have a bigger shadow being brought in as well. So they do twofold. Basically, they're trying to reverse you with bad morality that's outdated, bad ethics that are outdated, bad laws that are outdated, bad stuff. And they do it on all levels. And they get you stuck into this rigid form of what morality is, what law and order is, what it is to be anything that you can think of under the sun. So again, morality, like law, is basically morality, and law is life force and the knowledge of life force and the application of life force. The more that you have, you're in touch with real morality, the more you're in touch with natural law, real natural law. I'm not talking about, I just want to feed my belly. That's not natural law. That's you de-evolving. I just want to feed my base passions. I hate to say it. I hate to use that word, but it's the truth. It's going to be ugly. This is probably a hard video for some people to take. I'm going to put it out there. The more that you feed a base passion, I just want to fuck everybody. I just want to feed my belly. Somebody fucks with me, I'm going to fuck them up. And we all have those aspects of us because it's a self-defense mechanism. But the more that you feed into those things without any balance, without any knowledge of self, the more you de-evolve. You go backwards. And you can't de-evolve. So really, you're just killing yourself. The more that you, and then that's one extreme. I'm going to say this again. That's one extreme. That's one extreme of killing your life force, destroying morality, because you live in a community of people. If you just start fucking everybody indiscriminately, you start hurting people's feelings. If you just start taking advantage of people, if you just start killing, if I just go off in this community and start shooting everybody, eventually what happens is the natural instincts of other people kick in, and people either want to turn me into the authorities, they want to try to kill me themselves, or something always usually goes wrong. So then the other extreme is, if I just do certain things that I was always told are right, it's going to have a good effect. And that's the other extreme. That's bullshit. So you just go out here and just, no matter what, I'm always nice and good to people. And then, of course, you attract a lot of predators in your life. Know that you're just a pushover, and they start taking advantage of you. They start ripping you off. They start, you start becoming the victim of people who take advantage of our communities and our society. They poison our water because we have no knowledge of how economics works. We have no knowledge of political works. We have no knowledge of technology works. And this is what's happening in these poor communities. They're being taken advantage of because they're clinging on to aspects of just being good. If I just, why do you get angry in a debate? And they're not looking at the deeper meaning of what's happening in their community. So you have to be, just like this, they show the scales of balance. Ma'at balances. She has a feather on her hat. When the heart is weighed, when Anubis takes the person down into their death, and they're shown as recycling again, which is a higher form of evolution. It says that Osiris is there to judge. As they judge you based on your heart on a scale. People don't need to get caught up in the story as the elements of the story. They're always weighing something. So true law comes from the ability of weighing opposites. Okay, if I yell at everybody in my community, how many people are going to want to try to fight me? But if I let everybody push over on me, how many people are going to take advantage of me? If I just go out here and just start having indiscriminate sex with everybody I meet, how much trouble am I going to cause? If I don't have a good, healthy sex life, whether I'm single and, find other people with the same energy to have sex with, or whether I'm in a good relationship with somebody and me and them foster a good sex life, I'm going to just be deprived. I'm going to start becoming a maniac because I'm not getting my rocks off. I'm not getting it where I fit in. I'm not having some good goddamn sex. If I just eat anything I want, I can eat anything I want. I'm spiritually enlightened. I can have anything I want. Oh shit, I'm 500 pounds. I'm dying. I'm in a hospital somewhere. Oh, if I just starve myself all the time, why am I living a miserable life? So it's always this balance of equilibrium. That balance always leads you to self, and that balance always leads you to your deep instincts and how you can cultivate those instincts to benefit you in everyday life. Your instincts and your ego are good. You're supposed to go down into your instincts and your ego. And the reason why you have a consciousness, the reason why you have an ability to codify law, the reason why you have an ability to make things into a certain pattern is you're supposed to take that ego and the instincts and you're supposed to set up laws and abstract thoughts that help you promote that ego and instinct without destroying yourself. That's what the law is about. And that's what the priesthood is supposed to be about. The priesthood is supposed to be about is they look over society in general and they start cultivating laws, cults, cultures, ceremonies, magical ceremonies, worship services that cultivate in the instincts of the people, the best parts of the instincts of the people that build a stronger and stronger group of people. They're supposed to be catalysts of evolution. What most of the priesthood was brought into doing is setting up laws and rules and regulations that bring the instincts of slavery out, the instincts of domestication out, meaning instead of a wolf pack that's wild, that works together. Because if you ever look at a wolf pack, they're very well organized. They have a hierarchy in the wolf pack. If you ever look at a pride of lions, there's a hierarchy system. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but they usually have a very strong structure of hierarchy. The priesthood was supposed to bring out these natural tendencies of nature, creating groups of individuals who know how to survive. Those hierarchy structures are not just to have a dominant wolf, a dominant she hyena, a dominant male lion. More than that, it's so the species can survive and be plentiful. So the lioness and the lions work together in a hunting structure. They pick out the strongest lion who produces the strongest children. They work in as far as their hunting patterns. Wolves make sure that they do all sorts of stuff to make sure that the pack thrives and survives. That's what authority, power, hierarchy, rulership, kingship, politics, politicians, and priests are supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be utilizing the law to improve your life. And not your life as just, eating, sleeping, getting shelter, but your life as far as promoting your instincts to turn you into a god. the life force that they call Ra and Ra'et, created Ma'at, according to the Kemet people. So life force itself created the goddess of the law in order to produce a better life, to bring people up to a higher state of being. So these rigid rules, dogmas that are not balanced. You cannot be balanced if you're rigid, if you're not fluid. You cannot be balanced. If I go and I take something that's rigid and cannot be adjusted, it'll throw the scales off eventually. At first, it gives the illusion of stability, but eventually it will throw the scales off. So it's better to be fluid and be able to be adjusted. Morality is something that needs to be adjusted based on what instincts will bring us optimal survival and bring us into a state of paradise and bliss. All right? So again, morality is the knowledge of life force and the promotion of life force. If any of your morals are not promoting life force for you and the people around you, they're trash. They're fucking garbage. If there's laws that are written that are not promoting the life force of you and the people around you, they're fucking trash. Any habit or behavior that doesn't produce good life force between you and other people is fucking trash. And I'm man enough not to be a hypocrite and say that we all have behaviors that can be changed. If you get around the people who live with me, they'll say, hey, man, it's bad temper and blah, blah, blah. This happens. But like I was stating earlier, you can change this shit. You don't have to be in this shit, man. You don't have to be in this shit. Every time somebody tells you, oh, man, stop eating cheese, there's something about the cheese that your body's craving. It's not the fact that you have to get away from what you enjoy eating. You just have to find out another way to eat it. So all of a sudden, I learned how to take nutritional hemp, coconut oil, some gelatin, because I do eat meat products, and I know how to mix it together and make something that tastes just like cheese. So I get all my cheese that I need without eating cheese. That means that I haven't given up, because I know my body was craving cheese for a reason. It wanted fat. It wanted a certain taste that's gummy or whatever have you for a certain reason. That's how life is. If you're full of sexual desire, if you get angry easily, if you want to eat all the time, if you don't want to get up and go to work early in the morning, I'm not saying on one destructive path that you just enter in those things without thinking. But what you really need to do is you need to readjust the scales of your instinctual law to look in, why do I get upset when I'm made to wake up early in the morning? Do I really need to stop working, or do I need to readjust to a new schedule? Do I need to come into effect that I might be a night person? I have a friend, they love waking up early in the morning. They love it. They don't feel good unless they can wake up early, get everything done in the first part of the day and get on with their life. They have a different set of morality and law going on, code of ethics. The early bird gets the worm. They make sure they take care of everything up front, and then they go do what they got to do. I got people like myself. I usually like to get a lot of rest in. I get up, I have everything, I'm well rested, and I just explode forward. Bang, get stuff done. That doesn't mean in every situation, but it means that I'm understanding of my law. My law is that I need my rest. You can see in the bags under my eyes. But then I'm understanding of the law of others as well, because I work inside of a community, which is I still need to work and contribute to society. And that's just the raw facts. So again, morality is the promotion of life force. If you have anything that you're clinging on to as morality, is not promoting life force, fuck that shit. Throw it out the window. Thank you for joining me today. Hope you guys have a blessed Serpent Soul Sunday, and I'll
gain another level of self-mastery through this intensive course in Hermetics. Enroll today for your next steps in self-supremacy.
Facilitated by metaphysic enthusiast Diallo M. Crichton, this course is sure to deepen your relationship with nature, the universe, and most of all with yourself.
If you're ready to deepen your connection to all aspects of yourself, this course will help guide you. There are 7 universal laws or principles by which everything in the universe is governed. The universe exists in perfect harmony by virtue of these laws. The other 4 laws are transitory, mutable laws, meaning that they can be transcended or at least better used to create your ideal reality. This course in metaphysics will help you become the master of your own hologram, recreate your reality, enroll in mastery of metaphysics today. Contact Alchemy Temple today for more information or visit us at alchemytemple.org.
You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Lucifer, son of the morning, I'm gonna chase you out of earth. Lucifer, son of the morning, I'm gonna chase you out of earth.
A lot of times, these are angelic solar beings who are being placed in physical bodies and who don't relate with the fuckery that's going on in the world.
I'm gonna chase you out of
divide the feminine and you have divide masculine. Don't get it twisted, because until you understand that balance, you haven't attained your whole self. The etheric body now can be easily diminished. It can be depleted. It can just, the light can just go out of it very easily by shock and trauma.
I'm gonna chase you out of Lucifer. I'm gonna chase you out of Lucifer, son of the morning. Lucifer, son of the morning.
Your flesh is nature through what I call fingerprint reality, which is above
I'm
perception.
gonna chase you out of earth. Lucifer, I'm gonna chase you out of earth. Lucifer, son of the morning, I'm gonna chase you out of earth. I'm gonna chase you out of earth.